How's it going, everyone? This is Kevin. Today I want to bring along with me to talk about why I would pick the Tamron 35-150 over the 70-180. So let's jump right into it. If you're a prime or a zoom lens kind of guy, it does not matter because you're here watching to see why I chose this bad boy compared to this one. Zoom lenses have come a long way, in all honesty, compared to what they used to be, in my honest opinion. Because I remember when I used to have different kind of zoom lenses that weren't as sharp or as fast as prime lenses, which is what a lot of people tend to go with because they want that nice sharper kind of image, and also they get that lower aperture at like a 1.4, 1.2, 1.8. So I started with prime lenses. My first lens, I think, for my full frame camera was a 35 Sigma 1.4. Then I got the 85 1.8, and then eventually I finally started to get a basically zoom lens when I got the 70-180 because I wanted to have a more telephoto lens than just getting to 85. I slowly started acquiring zoom lenses with the 70-180, the 28-75, and then I got the 17-28 that I use for my videos and for vlogging. And that all happened and it was great until Tamron released a bombshell, the 35-150 f2 to 2.8 for Sony full frame. That aperture and just focal range to me was super wow, that you could compact it into this one lens and just be able to create something so great for the price point that you're getting as well. Which, after seeing the specs of this lens, it immediately made me think to myself, I could replace my 28-75 and my 70-180 plus my prime lenses and condense it down to just one lens to cover mainly everything that I need for my creation with an f2 all the way to 2.8, despite of having those prime lenses that could go to 1.4 to 1.8. And I've done a video about this before, how the f2 was just more than enough shallow depth of field for a nice bokeh compared to my Sigma 35 1.4. So to me, it just kind of made sense to just go ahead and start condensing down and go for this lens for my content creation. And with this lens, it honestly allowed me to just cover the ranges from my 28-75 for the most part with my 70-180 because I still have my 17-28, but the 35-150 covers mainly everything that I need. Yes, I could have had that extra 30 millimeters at the end from 150 to 180 with the 70-180, but for the versatility and basically the focal range that I could do with the aperture with a 35-150, it just kind of made sense for me to just go ahead and pull the trigger on this lens rather than use this lens now. And for me, I honestly prefer giving up that 30 millimeter range that I could have had extra with a 70-180 to have a lens that allows me to use 35-150 from an f2 to 2.8 and cover all my bases with one lens instead of having to interchange lenses, whether it's a 28-75 and the 70-180 or having all these other prime lenses. It just kind of made sense for me to just condense down to this lens only and be able to just kind of cover my bases very well and just give up that 30 millimeter just because it wasn't as needed to me for my content creation. And this lens has only simply migrated to my wife's camera setup now. She has a 28-75 and the 70-180. So technically, if I truly want to, I can go ahead and just snag it like I did for this video and use it if I want to use it for anything extra that I want to use for the extra 30 millimeter like focal range to get to the 180 if I know that I'm going to need that extra bit. But for the most part, I haven't really used it because I've been covered with this lens and I've made it work for my needs. But now, why would I pick the 35-150 over the 70-180? It's very simple for me. Right off the bat, it's just the versatility of the focal range of the 35-150 compared to the 70-180. It just helped me with my daily creation, basically, to have this lens to cover all my bases versus the 70-180. I would only get to go to a 70, so it wasn't wide enough for me, and having that 35 to basically the 70 mark where I can do a 50 range, or the 35 from f2 and then goes to like 2.2 all the way to 2.8 once you get to like about the 80 range. I mean, it just made more sense for me to have this lens to cover everything and not be interchanging lenses all the time. Plus, a 35 millimeter is probably one of my most favorite focal ranges, and an f2, it just made sense to get rid of my prime lenses anyway, and this covered that with the f2 versus the 1.4 that it was. So having the 35 millimeter range already was kind of very beneficial to me because it was my favorite focal range to have. I used to use my 35mm prime lens quite a bit. Honestly, I would always say I'm gonna bring this one just in case for portraits, but I would stick around with a 35 most of the time, and I still to this day tend to kind of range in that 35 range with the f2. Unless I want to get something from farther away, I'll kind of zoom in more, but it gives me the availability to do it from just one lens only. And another reason why I would pick this lens over this one is just the price range for what it was. It kind of made sense to invest a little bit further, with this one being $1,900 and this one being about $1,200 currently. I mean, I would have to pay 2 lenses to get just this one, which if I was gonna do that, might as well just get the one lens only to not have to change. Plus I get the f2. So I'm getting more bang for my buck when it comes down to the focal range of these 2 lenses, because for $1,200, this is a phenomenal lens. I'll still vouch for it and everything. But if you wanna fork over a little bit more to kind of cover more bases and condense down your gear to have less gear, but more outcome because you have a 35-150, I would suggest just kind of going for something like this, because you are actually getting more bang for your buck. Because for me, I tend to use all these focal ranges a lot easier in just one lens than having to go with a 28-75 and the 71-80 and having to apply for both, because overall that'll probably get you a little bit over than what the price of this lens is anyway. And ultimately with that price, it allowed me to get rid of my primes and sell them to kind of cover the cost of this lens as well. So it kind of didn't make sense for me to want to just, you know, go for just the 71-80 if I'm getting rid of all these lenses that can capture basically from 35-150, get rid of my prime from 35 or 85, and do most of what this lens could do. It just kind of seemed more ideal for me to just invest a little bit more to get this lens rather than just get the 71-80 and have primes. And in my honest opinion, this lens has been sharp enough to kind of battle it out with my prime lenses. In my honest opinion, I haven't seen any difference in quality when it comes down to my gear. So with that being said, it just kind of made sense that forking over a little bit more money to get this lens to cover prime lens sharpness and also the focal range and the aperture, it just kind of made more sense for me rather than a 71-80. If I would have to go out and pick one just today, I would still go for the 35-150 and I wouldn't have gotten the 71-80. Now you're probably wondering, why did I get the 71-80 then and not the 35-150 from the start? Well, Tamron didn't have the 35-150. It had only the zoom ranges of the Holy Trinity with a 17-28, 28-75, and the 71-80. That was the Holy Trinity, which I went for because I knew that I could use all that focal range and really get my bang for my buck with that setup. But once this lens was announced, I was kind of like, holy crap, I can get rid of so many more lenses, condense down my gear, despite of it being a little bit bigger than obviously the 71-80 or the 28-75. If you kind of fuse them together, it's still gonna be, for me, lighter to bring just this one lens than bringing multiple lenses. So that's why I didn't get it initially. And this is like kind of my, I guess, thought process to know if you're kind of debating which one to go with, if you should fork over the cash more. What I personally would do is just suck it up and kind of go for the 35-150 if you can find it, because apparently it's been hard. Everybody's been asking me like, how did I get mine? I pre-ordered it. I literally pre-ordered it like in October, and I got it in sometime like after that, like once I did like a release or whatever. Well, actually I pre-ordered it before because it released like late October, but anyways, I pre-ordered it, so that's how I did it. And that's how I got it. So if I would have known that this lens was coming around, I would have not gotten this one. But in all honesty, the 71-80 is still a phenomenal lens. You can do so much with it, and especially for the price point, if you don't mind kind of having multiple lenses. But if you want to kind of fork over the cash more, this is why I would pick the 35-150, because you get that f2 at 35 all the way to 150, you get to the 2.8, and you get a lot more focal range coverage for the money that you're investing with a lower aperture at the f2 all the way to the 2.8. Plus I can condense down my gear now, and this is something that I really like having whenever I'm out and about. I don't want to be carrying all this stuff with me, so that really helped with my decision to just go over with this lens more now rather than staying with the 71-80 and have this for my wife to use more, since she has a 20-75 and now the 71-80, and she can borrow mine whenever she wants to as well. But at least we have all our bases covered that way. But those are my reasons basically and my honest opinions about why I would get the 35-150 over the 71-80. Hopefully this helps you out in your decision making into which one you would get, because I know I get asked a lot if I would pick the 71-80 or the 35-150, or why did I go with the 35-150. 150? Is it too heavy? Is it too big? Is it too this, too that? That's why I like making these videos, to hopefully help you out. I try to break them down as much as possible so that it's not just one long video that makes it so hard to kind of follow along, and get more niche questions that I want to cover that I see more people ask me. So if you have any questions regarding the 35 to 150 or even the 70 to 180, go ahead and leave me a comment down below, and I'd be more than happy to make a video about it to see if it helps you out and other people as well. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.